welcome back. Outside Minds podcast. Because you've already seen too much, bro.
They only added it so it could be like a ritual.
They're saying there's these, the end of times, right? There's all these signs.
Do you think we would know? Like, do you think the general public would know if Jesus came back?
Take a picture for $5. You have a purpose in life, and if you don't fulfill it, you will come back until you fulfill it.
Welcome back, outsiders, to another episode of the Outside Minds podcast. I'm your host and creator, CeeLo Free. This is the other host and creator,
.420.
and I am very, very, very excited for this week's guest. She has been on Tinfoil Hat episode 419 and Tinfoil Hat episode 689. You should definitely check those out. They are banger episodes. I went back and listened to both of them yesterday. Really amazing episodes. Her name is Amy Belair. On Instagram, she's known as cosmic.oracle. She's an Akashic Records reader and spiritual guide. We're going to kick it on over to her so she can tell you a little bit about herself and a little bit more about where you can find her. Go ahead.
Oh, hey, thanks. Thanks for having me on your show.
Absolutely.
Well, I don't know. I'm a mom. I'm a Canadian. I live in Ontario. I kind of just do my thing, but I just see life through a spiritual lens, and I really always have. And I got to a point in my life where I couldn't compartmentalize that anymore and go to a regular job and pretend to be normal and just talk normal talk to people. So I decided to turn this into my work. So I started a podcast first, talking about spiritual and psychic awakening. And I began doing Akashic Records readings for people, and then, built some courses to just talk about all the cool downloads that I get as I continue on this path.
What's your podcast called?
Third Eye Awakening.
Nice.
Absolutely. I was going to plug that at the beginning, but I forgot. But Third Eye Awakening podcast. Make sure you guys check that out. She has some very interesting episodes, very interesting topics. So you said you got to a point in your life where you couldn't really continue to just live life regularly because you were seeing life through a different lens. A higher perspective, if you will. Would you say that you were always kind of inherently spiritual or had a kind of gift to see things in a different way, or did it kind of come onto you gradually or at a certain point in your life? I know you said it came to a point, but did you always have a spiritual gift, do you feel like?
I mean, in hindsight, yes, but it was so subtle that I didn't think I was psychic, for example. I totally wanted to be psychic, but I didn't think I was psychic. But I did always see things through a spiritual lens. When I was a little kid and a teenager, I was pretty good at just skimming the surface with people and just shooting shit and being able to enjoy regular conversations. And then I went through my first spiritual awakening in the sense that I suddenly was aware of more than the average person was. Wow. And I had to go through that whole process of questioning my sanity and having raging social anxiety and feeling bombarded by more energy that I could understand or manage. Wow. And yet for a long time, I kept all that compartmentalized. I was really trying to pretend I was a normal person.
So what kind of, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Well, what kind of changes was it? Was it kind of were you suddenly able to really feel people's energy, or were you seeing their auras, or right past the veil, through their intentions and stuff like that? Were you getting kind of psychic thoughts or something like that? Were you able to read people's thoughts, or what kind of change was that, if I might ask?
Yeah, no, it wasn't anything that obvious, which is also why I just thought I was crazy, and I still didn't think I was psychic. So It just felt like I must have been more aware of people's energy, but I had no context for it. I had never even heard the term empath. Okay. So I could sense people's vibe, but I didn't know that's what I was sensing. I just knew I was suddenly really uncomfortable in social gatherings.
Okay.
And I think I probably could tell people's intentions or motivations, but it wasn't cultivated. I couldn't use it to my advantage. You know what I mean? I wasn't able to be oh, you're shady, I don't want to actually talk to you. Yeah. It was just a feeling of being uncomfortable around this person and not really being able to put my finger on why. Because it probably didn't happen literally overnight, but in my memory, it felt like it was overnight. Like it
Okay,
felt like
okay.
one day I could get along with people and really not have any social friction, and then another day I just couldn't really do that anymore.
And I feel like like you said, it kind of like manifested into like a social anxiety, and most people would call that kind of
Hmm.
like, like trauma and stuff like that. And we've had the conversation a few times on our podcast that people who have gone through traumatic experiences are prone to be able to, because everybody has the ability to type into these spiritual psychic gifts and stuff like that. But we've had the conversation before that people who are have survived trauma kind of are more prone to discovering their gifts because they've kind of been pushed into the darkness and have been forced to do the inner work. Would you agree with that? And can you expand on that at all?
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely think that's true. I think that last piece that you said is really accurate. It's almost like through the discomfort of, trauma, however that may manifest in a person's life, is you're pushed past the boundary of the ego construct, the
Mm-hmm.
identity construct you've formulated, and you're suddenly pushed into the unknown.
Mm-hmm.
And that usually just that in and of itself feels like darkness. And then if it's
Yeah.
coupled with a truly traumatic event, then there's like two layers of darkness that you have to figure out how to navigate in order to survive. And then you sort of have to draw on like deeper reserves of consciousness within yourself and
Mm-hmm.
start to build a new framework for
Yeah.
understanding reality. And I think that's what lets us learn how to recognize our innate psychic abilities that are already there. They've been there the whole time.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, and I feel like it's like when I've had my experiences, it's like a remembering of who you really are. And you've kind of
Mhm.
had that same concept and theme when you've been on Sam shows and stuff like that. So that's why, some of your episodes really called to me because you had like a lot of themes that I was kind of like researching stuff. And at the moment, it was like the way you describe like the structure of the universe, free will and polarity and their role in this dimension, and like manifestation on higher dimensions and stuff like that. So that's kind of the stuff I wanted to get into. But before we get into that, let's actually talk about the Akashic Records. Can you tell us what it is from your perspective, what it is exactly? And because a lot, some of us get the idea of it, but the average person kind of doesn't really get the concept of it. So can you get into that a little bit?
Yeah, definitely. I love the Akashic Records. So I understand it to be like an 11th dimensional frequency according to the framework for the dimensions that I've received. And rather than being a location that you go to, like the third and fourth dimensions are the only place where there's like space, where you have to travel from one place to another. Beyond the fourth dimension, it's all frequencies. So it's the adjustment of our own consciousness to different frequencies.
Mm-hmm.
And the Akashic Records is sort of like the frequency of, I guess you could say, universal knowledge. It's super hard to explain in words, but it's like it's like there's this layer that contains a record of everything that has ever happened on this timeline, on all timelines
Mm-hmm.
across all dimensions, right down to like the thoughts that were thought, the emotions that were felt, the actions that were taken, the words that were spoken. And so as you learn to adjust your frequency to match that space where everything is contained, you can start to access and unpack that information and use it
Wow.
to support you as a human being in the third and fourth dimension.
Wow. Wow. Absolutely. Absolutely. So I mean, I listened to the podcast. I don't know if you want to talk about how you started getting into the Akashic Records. You can talk about that if you want. I know it's kind of a sensitive story for you. Um, but um, but yeah, I feel like people, if they want to see it from like a more left brain perspective, because people always talk about like simulation theory and stuff like that. The way I like to describe it is like it's like a pool of information, kind of like it's almost like a program or something like that. You have this pool of information, but it's like an infinite pool of information because, like you said, it's like every timeline, but every other timeline and every other dimension too and stuff like that. Can you tell us how the information comes through to you? Because you talked about being clairvoyant, but I know that people can be like multiple things. They can get like even like smells, sight, things like that. Can you talk about how the information comes to you when you're tapped into the field?
Yeah. So for me, it comes through predominantly actually as claircognizance, which means clear knowing, which
Okay.
is why I didn't realize I was psychic for a long time because
Wow.
I thought that to be psychic means you're seeing like actual angels in front of you or demons in front of you or whatever. And it's like I can count on one hand the number of times I've seen like a shadow figure or like some kind of weird thing. I am also clairvoyant, but it all happens in my third eye, in my mind's eye. And but the information comes through first as clear knowing, which is really hard to like to figure out that that's a psychic ability because it just feels like your thoughts. But it's a knowing that you don't have an explanation for. Like it's just so it really is a
Yeah.
clear knowing
Yeah.
where you're just like, I know this, I know it. I don't know how I know it, but I know it. And then it sort of seems to like come down through my crown as a knowing and then filter through my third eye and then it like fleshes itself out as a picture.
Wow.
I'm not super clairaudient, so I'll occasionally get like ambient sounds to help inform my understanding of the information I'm tapping into, but that's the least common way it'll come through for me. And I do get like I call it clear empathy. Like I feel the emotions that other people
Wow.
are feeling. And sometimes I'll feel the sensations in my body. So like if somebody, if I see a past life where somebody like, burned to death in a barn fire or something like that,
Oh,
I'll
wow.
feel the heat. Like I won't feel like I'm burning alive because I'm not, but I'll feel the heat of that and the panic. I feel a lot of those like nervous system sensations.
Okay, so you're not necessarily feeling it in your nervous system because you said it's like a third eye kind of thing. So it's almost like you're within like it's almost like the thought of someone that happening to someone. Is that correct? Am I getting that correctly?
Yeah, it would be like it's almost like actually I have a VR headset on
Oh, okay.
and there's not as much sound. And if there is sound, it tends to more be ambient sound. Like let's go with the barn fire analogy. It would be like the sound of the flames and the wood starting to crack. Rather than people's voices or like I don't necessarily receive messages as an audible word, but I'll receive messages as like a thought that might involve words. But it's like having a VR headset on and feeling very immersed in what I'm seeing. But if you were like in a simulated barn fire, your actual body isn't actually burning, but the intensity of you know the way the information is coming through the VR headset, you can kind of like simulate for yourself the feeling of burning. It's kind of like
Oh,
that.
okay, okay. Wow, wow. That's super
I've
interesting.
had a few clairvoyant instances for sure in my life, and other people were the ones who pointed out, and then I started to notice a few little things here and there. But I'm really into psychedelics, so I think that I tapped in through that way because
Kind of
that's when
breaks the barrier down a
yeah,
little
that's when
bit.
I started thinking different and noticing patterns that probably had been there, but I just weren't, hip to it or whatever.
Yeah, and we kind of
Yeah.
have this programming within us that the programs just be like, that's not real. You're not psychic. You're not real. That's not your
It's a
intuition.
coincidence,
It was an
right?
educated guess. You know what I mean? Can you talk about the programming? Can you talk about the programming that's kind of embedded in us as a society that kind of takes us away from these abilities?
Yeah, well, I believe in something called the false matrix. I believe there's an organic matrix and a false matrix, and we're in both at the same time. And the false matrix is like almost like a shitty copy of the
Yeah.
matrix, that like the organic one that's overlaid, and it imposes itself on our consciousness and our physiology through so many levels. It's like basically like vibrational interference to keep us operating at a certain level of density, including our consciousness. And so it also includes programs that are sort of injected through yeah, it's like where does that even come from, right? Like the mm,
Would you say that's
the
along the lines of
predisposition
like?
to
Would you say that's along the lines of like negative thought forms and stuff like that, and just like violence in movies and music and lust in music
Just
and
low
stuff like
vibration
that?
stuff,
Low
right?
vibrational stuff that helps us manifest and keep stable this false matrix that you talk about. That's overlaid over the natural matrix. Is that what you mean?
oh yeah, yeah. It's crazy. Like it comes in. through every level imaginable, like certainly obviously through our entertainment media, like hardcore,
Yeah.
because we all have a reticular activating system that, you know, like seeds our psyche and see, like we're the ones manifesting this reality at
right,
all
absolutely.
times.
right.
And it's just like feeding low level shit into our eyeballs all the time to go into that part of our brain. And then there's also, yeah, that like that programming, like where does it come from to say, oh, it's just a coincidence?
Right.
Why?
And
Why do
nothing's
we do
magical,
that?
right? It's all woo woo. There can't be magic. There can't be mystery, right? There absolutely
Yeah.
can be, but they don't want to accept it.
Yeah, and it's wild because actually we're fucking surrounded by magic
100%.
everywhere all
Yeah.
the time. And
Internet. What we're
we
doing right now is magic. I'm watching you on a computer.
absolutely,
This is magic.
absolutely. And I mean, like, I used to be a midwife, so I was witness to a whole bunch of births.
Mm-hmm.
And to like, you can't see that many births without seeing like being changed by it.
Right.
Like, you can't.
Yeah.
It's there's so much like that is a literal soul coming in through the stargate of a woman's body
Right.
into this dimension. It's insane, and it's so wild that it's just like, oh no, it's just science, it's just biology, whatever. Like we try to, you know,
Right.
control it all with data and technology, and but it's to take away, and there's no room in the general like maternity care system, but also the healthcare system in general, the education system, everything. There's no room for the sacred. So it's like
Yeah.
this whole conversation is omitted from our like general collective, at least in Western society, way of operating.
Yeah.
It's just like we've been lobotomized,
Mm-hmm.
you know, from this whole part of ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. So I want to talk about the structure of the universe as it applies to you and how you've seen it and how it's shown itself to you through the Akashic Records. Because you talked about the Akashic Records existing in the 11th dimension. And if I'm correct, if you're operating under the same way I kind of feel like it is, when you get to the 11th or 12th or maybe 13th, whichever one it is, it starts back over to the first, right? Am I correct? So
Yeah, the 13th, yeah.
okay, so absolutely. So does that mean that the 11th dimension is pretty much you're 1 or 2 dimensions away from like complete source consciousness? Is that kind of how you see it?
Yeah,
sense?
within this like universe, I guess you could say. Yeah.
Okay. And then it trickles down
Y-
into individuality. Am I correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Can you talk about like how you see it a little bit like yourself?
Yeah, for sure. And this is just the way it was shown to me. So if anybody's listening and you're like, well, that's not how I learned it,
Yeah,
don't,
yeah, yeah,
I'm
yeah.
not trying to
No,
contradict
absolutely.
anything anybody's learned.
Yeah.
I so the way I was shown is that the 0 point field, or we'll often call it the quantum field, is sort of like the base layer of this universe. And I think it's probably true within the whole multiverse, but that's a whole other kettle of fish. But within this universe, the 0 point field is like a field of undifferentiated potential.
Hmm.
So it hasn't taken any form at all. It's just pure potential. And then the first dimension is the first like ripple of God consciousness, and it is the
Wow.
statement, I am.
Okay,
And
okay.
so, and you can fill in the blank to anything.
Mm-hmm.
So we're always operating within the 0 point field and the first dimension all the time because we're
Oh.
creator beings. So every time we say I am, we create a vibrational ripple in that 0 point field, which starts to generate momentum to become manifested here.
Whoa.
Which is
Okay,
why you
okay.
say I am healthy, I am rich instead of I want to be healthy and I
Yeah.
want to be rich.
Yeah, and that's also the
Yes.
famous phrase, I am that I am.
I
Because
am, therefore I am.
I am that I am creation. I am that I am. I am creation, basically. That's what God said, basically. Yeah,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that statement is so powerful. And then the second dimension is almost this thing that happens when like when God says I am and it becomes something, then it's like, and I am this. Like it becomes,
Yeah,
do you
yeah,
know what
yeah.
I mean? Like all of a sudden it becomes two
The
things, and
ripple
it first
effect.
becomes a yeah, and it exists along a polarity, so which creates a
Okay. Yeah, yeah,
spectrum.
yeah, yeah. Yeah.
So, you know, like in, for example, in the Genesis creation story, which I'm going to very loosely reference because I am not a biblical scholar, but it's like like God became the darkness and the light, right? Like, or at
Uh-huh.
first there was just the darkness and God said, let there be light. And then there was both. And then there's every single shade of gray in between.
Mm-hmm.
And the third dimension is a new I am, which becomes the observer, the experiencer, and the chooser.
Mm.
And it
Wow.
also, like that perspective of observing, experiencing, and choosing also collapses the waveform and brings it into manifestation through the process of observation and experience. So that's where, like, the third dimension is where we exist, and we can often feel trapped here, but it's actually like probably the most exciting place to be, to be
Yeah,
honest.
yeah,
It's
yeah, yeah.
so thrilling. And then you're always playing between polarity all the time in the third dimension.
Uh-huh.
So it's like your perspective, and then just to make it simple, like good and evil,
Uh-huh. Yeah,
right?
yeah,
So you're
absolutely.
always choosing somewhere in that spectrum. And that spectrum isn't limited to good and evil.
Yeah.
Like that's the biggest theme in our universe. But that there's like, you know, the spectrum of hot and cold, or the spectrum of day and night. There's so many spectrums to choose from all the time. And then the fourth dimension is, I guess it's like you could call it space and time, and it's what allows evolution so that we're not actually like stuck in a triangle
Uh-huh.
that of just like, you know, observing and choosing between the same two things all the time. It's like the fourth dimension allows the evolution of our consciousness as we experience this third dimensional realm.
Okay.
It's the story, it's the dream. So it's the story you tell about yourself in your life, it's the dream, this collective, crazy holographic dream projection, as well as like our actual dreams. It's the astral. It's where all the fuckery happens.
Wow.
And then the fifth dimension is when you can be in this physical body and fully realize that and operate from that level of lucidity in the dream. You become the lucid dreamer and you're operating from the heart. That's the key thing. It has to be from the heart, where, you know, those illusions of separation dissolve, and you really
Yeah.
understand that if you hurt somebody else, you're hurting yourself.
Right.
Yeah.
There is no way of creating a loser out of someone else so that you can be a winner. And once you get through to that fifth dimensional awareness, all the rest of them open up. So the sixth dimension is like geometric templates that we connect to on a psychic level that we then
Yes.
translate through our consciousness into this physical reality. The
Okay.
seventh dimension is sort of like what those geometries are made of. It's like color, light, and sound. I guess it's like this swirling kaleidoscoping place where it all moves. The eighth dimension is sort of the oversoul, like the bigger consciousness to which we belong, but it's not God.
Mm.
Do you know what I
Okay.
mean? It's like a
Yeah, 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 yeah.
subversion of God.
Yeah.
And then in the ninth dimension, we start getting up into really abstract territory, where it becomes more like pure thought, pure consciousness. It's really hard to describe it into words, but I think a place that a lot of people go to when they're seasoned at meditating, and they
Wow.
just completely detach and they're in like a total state of presence. And it's not necessarily heart presence, it's more like mental presence. It's just
Uh-huh.
pure consciousness. The 10th dimension is sort of like, I call it the angelic realm because I think, I don't know, like man, it's hard to describe. It's like there are beings at the 10th dimension who they're writing the bigger story and they're handing it down to us, and we're receiving it through our psychic
Uh,
abilities and through our dreams, and sort of they're like the the ones who are composing the song, and then we're the orchestra members who are
would you kind of say
playing
like
the
that they're
song.
like the equalizers, like the balancers, like all right, if this happens, then this is gonna happen.
Yeah. Yeah,
Wow.
they see the whole bigger picture, and they're like active, so there's consciousness there. And then the 11th dimension, the Akashic Records, is kind of just this neutral place where there are beings there. They're called the record keepers, but it's more like they're not angels. They don't have names. It's just sort of like a mediating interface between us as humans and that like layer of pure information. Like you said, it's just infinite information. So it's
Wow.
kind of just like this layer, the storage layer, the cloud, I call it, is like the
Okay.
cloud. It just holds all the information that
Wow.
can't be contained within the simulation and needs to get offloaded, but it doesn't just disappear. Like it stays somewhere.
Uh-huh.
And then the 12th dimension is the Christ consciousness. So it's the like the fully self-actualized consciousness that can both be in a physical body and completely like connected through all of these dimensional levels, and therefore doesn't really have an ego as we would understand it. And then the 13th dimension is like the black hole at the galactic core kind of thing that we,
It's
if
like
you think of
this.
it like a toroidal field, it's sort of like
It's
the
like a
tube in
donut
the
almost. Yeah,
center,
yeah,
the
yeah,
donut.
yeah,
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 it's like that's the hole we go through. It's the giant
yeah.
mystery. It's like the womb of the divine feminine, and then we get spat out on the other side into a whole
Yeah, the
other.
cool thing about the torus field is when you kind of shape it in a 2D fashion, you make
Infinite.
like the infinity symbol. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Yeah. I was so stoked to listening to you describe the structure of the universe. It's just that just resonates
Right
with
here,
me
look.
because exactly we have the torus field right here. Okay, so this guy Loro, he has this clothing company called Corazones Illuminados, which is Enlightened Hearts, and I saw this Taurus field with the heart on it, and I'm like, dude, that reminds me of this book I'm reading, Ancient Secrets of the Flower of Life. He was like, boom, read that book in high school. That's why I made this flower brand, and then we were just been friends ever since. I don't know if you ever read that book, but it's very similar to like the topics we talk about, stuff like that. But yeah, synchronicities, coincidences, they happen. Like I said, I was so happy listening to you talk about the structure of the universe, because like they say, it's within us. And you use this one word that I wanted to bring back. It's like awareness, because what I realized when I smoked DMT at Todd's house, I was like, oh shit, I've been here before. And I said something about coming back to reality. He was like, nah, you're there and you've always been there. I'm like, oh shit, like we exist in all these different dimensions, all simultaneously, like they always say, but it's a matter of awareness. You know what I mean? And basically, it's a battle for attention because our mind is where we manifest things. It's the principle of mentalism. And the funniest thing about it is to transcend these dimensions and go to these higher layers is to meditate, which is basically mindfulness meditation, where you kind of just like you said, observe your thoughts because you're the observer, and then you remove yourself from becoming the experiencer, and then you start to be like, okay, I'm the observer, okay, I'm this, until you finally, like you said, you get to I am. You know what I mean? So I'm so stoked to hear you talk about that. Can you talk about on this dimension polarity and free will, because that was a big topic in your episodes on TFH as well, and when I went on to our episode as well, that was one of the big topics as well. So
Right.
can you talk about that, and can you talk about how that plays out on this realm, and how that plays out into our story and our karma and everything like that, and how we experience everything?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like I'm exploring this one all the time because
Hmm.
I, like so many other people who would be attracted to similar content to Tinfoil Hat, like we want to know. Like we just want to know the
Yeah.
truth, you know?
Yeah.
And it's like it's such a sneaky fucker. So the way I understand it is that in order to okay, free will is a really big deal. It's a really, really big deal. It's like very sacred, free will. And in order for free will to actually be a thing, there has to be choice, like true choice, which means that there
Yeah.
has to
Yes.
be a certain amount of consciousness holding down the dark,
Yes.
or the evil or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. And that can be a hard pill to swallow because it means that there is that creates suffering for people.
Right.
And I'm never trying to sweep that under the rug ever.
Yeah.
But the balance of it, the balance that is supposed to exist, I think something similar is said in the Law of One, is that it's supposed to be slightly favored towards I guess like service to all creation. I think in the Law of One, I haven't read it, but it comes through my field often enough because it's a pretty important work. But it's like the service to self, service to other. But to me, service to other doesn't quite encompass it. It's like service to self versus service to all, service to all creation. Because if you are truly in service to other, it is going to be in service to everything and everyone. So there has to be a certain faction that's holding down service to self, and then there has to be like slightly more holding down service to other, so that we can be aware of the consequences of choosing service to self, but it still has like a weighty enough temptation that we are truly experiencing free will. Like up in the angelic realms, there isn't that dark service to self. So they can be virtuous easily. And that's why this is such a thrilling place to be, because it's very challenging. Like you have to choose virtue.
Yes.
You have to choose it in all moments.
You brought something up saying like life is like a puzzle game, or I forget exactly what you worded it, but I resonated with that for sure. It's like there's constant puzzles out here. Yeah.
Constantly. And it makes it so fascinating, and it makes it like, I believe this place is a mystery school, and it is a graduate level program. It is not,
it's an escape room.
It totally is an escape room.
Yeah.
100%, 100%. That's what it is. And it's like an advanced level escape room.
Right.
And I think that everybody who comes here, like one of the weirdest programs we receive is that humans are stupid, we're flawed, like, oh, look what we do to our earth, like we're so terrible. But I think that it's the false matrix that's causing damage to the earth. And actually, like everybody who incarnates as a human, regardless of their IQ level in their given incarnation, is a very advanced soul. Is a very advanced soul. And this is a very, very convincing, immersive, like sort of organic simulation, if you will.
Yeah, can you talk about manifestation? Because it's something you said that resonated with me that I would kind of always thought about myself as well, was like when you get to the higher dimensions, like the fifth and sixth dimension, boom, you can experience it like that, like instant manifestation, life, feelings, whatever. So it's a little bit boring, but when you come down to this plane on spiritual amnesia and you forget that you can manifest and you got to go through time and space, it's a little bit harder on this dimension. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, totally. You're totally right. Yeah. Once we get to what I've seen, because I also get a lot of visions of sort of, I call it, and a lot of people call it 5D New Earth. Like, I believe we're at the tipping point where the 100th monkey effect has occurred. And now it's just a matter of time before it really solidifies in our reality.
Yeah.
But I think that enough people are very awake now.
Right.
But once we get into the 5D, we're able to manifest an apple out of thin air. Like there is no need for money. There is no need, like survival isn't really a thing anymore. And it's very fun. And the thrill of it is different than the thrill that we experience here. Here, there's a big lag, like energy we have to spend quite a lot of attention continuously choosing the thing that we want to have manifest, to give it the time to build the momentum to become manifested in our reality. And we get a little bit impatient, and I think we're definitely entrained to have expect instant gratification. So that we kind of give up and we, feel like, oh, this is all bullshit. This is all new age bullshit, instead of learning to discipline ourselves and cultivate mastery over this reality. But it is like, you do have to begin to choose what you want to have manifested, and you have to choose it no matter what. And you have to choose it in a way that is not like, it's like, you have to choose it in sort of a general way. Like you have to begin by choosing like, everything is getting better. Everything is getting better. Everything is getting better. And so that doesn't necessarily have to then mean like I win the lottery and I become a millionaire, or, whatever it means to us. Like if we get that specific right away, we kind of lose it. It's like we choke the life out of it. But if we can begin by choosing, it's like a choose your own adventure, and you just got to choose the path that feels better to begin with and hold that, even though the hologram's probably going to throw a bunch of shit at you
Hmm.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
test
like
you
it
at
usually
first.
does. Like it usually does. Okay,
Yeah.
before we get on to more of the stuff I love, can you talk about your spontaneous memories of being an alien on a different planet? I heard you kind of say that, but you didn't really get a chance to get into it.
Oh my God. Okay. I mean, I have a few. So the first memories, the first successful past life memories I had in the beginning, I couldn't access them. Like I would listen to was a CD by Brian Weiss to like a past life regression CD, and I would
Okay.
listen and I would get nothing. I was so frustrated. And then one day I put it on while I was making a beaded necklace. I just put on the CD in the background, and so I wasn't really trying to meditate. I was just listening to it in the background, and I was focusing on my task, and that was perfect because then my consciousness just journeyed because my body was busy, and the part of our brain that tends to block these things was preoccupied
It's
with
almost like you
making the
were
necklace.
meditating because you were making the necklace, right?
Totally, totally. And I just suddenly spontaneously had two memories come through. The first one, I don't even know what dimension or like universe it was, but I was this big undulating, like iridescent pinkish white. It felt like I was a fish, but there was no water. It was like it was the way that
Oh.
my body moved in space, but it almost felt like a vacuum. There was no sound and there was no light source, but it also wasn't completely pitch black. It was so strange. I was like, what the fuck was that? That was nuts. It was, and I knew that it was from a different world because I had nothing that I could even remotely connect it to be like, oh, well, that's why I had this vision. It was so different from anything I'd ever imagined or
It's almost
experienced
like
or
I
seen
can't make it
before.
up because I've never seen anything like it.
Yes, it was exactly like
Wow.
that. And then my mind traveled to another past life experience, which I'm not sure if it was on this earth, but it looked a lot like this earth. But I was a being that had it almost kind of looked like a hobbit, a cross between a hobbit and like I don't know, like a Native American person back in the day, like clothes made of the materials and the
Okay.
environment. But I had green skin and I was
Oh,
a male being, and we were very non-emotional, just very matter of fact.
Reptilian.
No, I wasn't. It was a mammal. It wasn't a reptilian, but very it was just like very practical. Like there wasn't a lot of emotional depth.
wow.
And there was this weird predator on the planet. It was huge and it had like fur on it. And that was how most of us died. And I died that way. And I remember when I died, I was just like, oh, like I'm dying.
I
Like we were
died.
just so matter of fact, all of us,
Wow.
very, very peaceful. And we lived in the woods in yeah, like I don't even think we really created huts. Like it was very similar to being an animal, but we weren't animals. We were humanoid beings.
Wow. That could maybe, I don't know, that could be a future timeline because that
Yeah.
reminds me of how they talk about the Greys, how the Greys devolved into these creatures that weren't emotional beings anymore. And because of that, they had problems not only recreating, but also procreating, but also manifesting because you got to manifest through your feeling, right? You got to manifest through your heart chakra because they always say you got to manifest through your mind, but also you got to feel it. Like you got to know it. You know what I'm saying? So they said something about when the Greys devolved, they lost some of their powers. You know what I'm saying? Because they were a little bit more disconnected from their divinity because they devolved.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's probably a path that's being taken by like the real diehard sort of
Yeah.
transhumanist.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, like they're just their desire to fuse with technology in order to improve their life and sort of moving away from the organic template that we were given. Um, it comes with a price, you know, like you don't
Well,
just get to enhance yourself without paying a price of some kind. I think that
Transhumanism.
price,
Well, that
yeah.
comes right into my next topic that I wanted to ask you about. Because they when they talk about the fall of Atlantis, they say how it was a misuse of technology, and they were getting imbalance between their basically their left brain and their right brain, their divine masculine and their divine feminine. They were getting very disconnected from emotion, and they were advancing in technology, and that's why it fell. And a lot of people argue that Atlantis is a physical place, but I wanted to talk to you about it and see your scope on it and see if anything's came through for you, because the way I see it, it's more of like a spiritual and mental collapse, mental fall that fell us into this 3D plane. Because when you talked on Tinfoil Hat, you said we're not even supposed to be communicating through our throat chakras. We use those to create. And you were talking about how in the Akashic Records it came through that people back in the day, or beings back in the day, would use their throat chakras to create like monolithic structures like the pyramids and stuff like that. Do you have the story of Atlantis? Is there anything about the story of Atlantis that comes through for you that you can talk about at all that's connected to all this?
Yeah, I've definitely seen it through people's Akashic Records readings, and it feels like it was an attempt to recreate the original golden age. So
Okay.
it's like there was an original golden age, at least in this cycle, that we're, still like this big long story arc that we're still kind of playing out. There was an original golden age, and it was truly golden. And then there was an almost like equally dark, terrible fall. And time lapsed from that fall, and it led to Atlantis, which was the attempt to reorganize ourselves and recreate the golden age that was lost. But unfortunately, either the timing wasn't right, or I mean, there's so much. I could talk to you for like 3 hours to properly explain this, but yeah, I
Yeah.
know we don't have that kind of time. But like, there was still unmetabolized darkness in that free will sort of axis. So that means there were still people that at the end of the day would choose themselves and their own elevation
Oh,
over what was best for everyone. And it just kind of compounded, and it created like, a reliance on technology. Like, for example, just expanding on what I was saying about using our voices to create the pyramids and, things like that. We, even when we create an apple out of thin air in the fifth dimension, we're not doing that just as an individual. We are always creating together. There are at least three
wow.
members of a group, and we focus our energy together and our intention together. And then it's almost like we're layering our frequency, and we create whatever it is we're doing. The bigger thing we're creating, usually the more people are required um, to contribute like it's like our tone. We use our voices primarily
Yeah.
to produce a tone. And in Atlantis, it's almost like there were still some people who didn't, like, they wanted to create what they wanted to create, and they didn't want to have to get the approval of at least two other people to help them do it. There was just too much self-servingness.
Yeah, I was gonna
And so
say it
they
was that
invented,
service to self versus service to the
yeah,
all as a yeah. Okay, okay.
totally. And so they created technology to help them manifest their individual will. And that technology, like, just that was a slippery slope, and it just sort of it
Oh,
destabilized the whole thing, because you can never just choose yourself over all of creation. It's
yeah,
always going to fall. It's a
yeah,
self-limiting system. Like,
yeah.
that path cannot go on forever.
Wow. And then I heard you say earlier, it always has, in order for free will to really be truly experienced, it kind of has to almost be like an even kill, but it kind of always has to go back to service to all, because I feel like, is that because it changes our evolutionary trajectory? Because if it leans more towards the other way, we're kind of devolving a little bit more.
Yeah, totally. That's totally it. Because if you think about everything on this spectrum, you can think about it on a teeter-totter, right? Like, um, if too much consciousness is towards the service to self side, then it's going to weight it down, and
Yeah,
everything's going to trickle down that
yeah,
plane.
yeah,
And so it needs to be slightly weighted towards service to other, or service to the collective, so that, because it's such an easy slippery slope to go down, to get really trapped here. Like, the more we choose service to self, even in tiny little ways, and I am not somehow above this, like, I'm a human like everybody else, and I choose myself unconsciously all the time and notice it. And I'm like, shit,
Yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah, yeah.
humbling to be a human. But that all, it drags everybody down every time we do it. And it devolves our consciousness, just like you said, into, um, I don't know, like what are we even pursuing when we do that? Like what is like I think
Yeah.
about Star Wars and the ultimate Sith Lord, and I'm like, you get like 10 seconds of like ultimate glory where you're like, I'm the fucking supreme
Yeah,
one,
right.
and then what?
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
then what? There's nothing
Yeah.
left, right? So it's like, why are we doing it? But it's so tempting. It's so tempting. So the way that we're meant to exist is to be slightly weighted more towards service to all so that we still have free will, but we're just, we're a little bit more likely to go downhill towards the direction of our continuous collective evolution rather than go
Yes.
downhill towards the individual
Yes.
ego taking over.
Yes, yes. I love it. I love it. Okay, okay. So, I mean, everything that you talk about and the way that it's set up and the way you explain it is really resonates with me. So let's talk more about how you said, because you said, I think, oh, you talked about the Tower of Babel and how we are actually supposed to communicate telepathically. Can you talk about how our bodies are actually supposed to look and function the proper way? Because like you said, we're supposed to be telepathic and we're actually supposed to use our throat chakra to create things in the field around us, correct? Can you talk about how our bodies are really supposed to look and function?
Ooh, look, nobody's ever asked me that. Let me like tune into this for a second. Well, we look really similar to the way that we look now, but with a lot more, like we're mm, much healthier. Like for example, like very like we're glowing light off of ourselves, and we
Wow.
have like very thick hair. Like just there's a lot of health because basically we have a lot of energy and a lot of prana, but we do look really similar, like two arms, two legs, a torso, a head.
Mm.
But we can also see each other's chakras. And so you're super aware of all of that. And the way that we communicate with each other is there's like three levels to the telepathy. So the one that we're the most familiar with and we still have activated here is the sacral chakra telepathy. And that's just like the awareness of somebody else's energy when you're in the same space as them,
Okay.
especially if it's somebody that you're close to,
Mm.
like
Yeah.
we experience it more like um, when it's somebody that we're romantically involved with,
Mm-hmm.
or if it's like a parent or a sibling or somebody that you have a really comfortable relationship with, or your children, something like that,
Yeah.
or pets. We feel it with our pets a lot. It's just this like sacral chakra pulse where you can almost like read the other person's energy
It's
and
almost
what
like a
they're going to
signal they're
do.
sending off that you're sending off towards each other that you're continuously sending and receiving. Yeah.
Totally, totally. It's like if you just know that your cat, there's something off about them, but like they can't tell you with their words, but you just know.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And then the other type of telepathy, the most important one is heart telepathy. And that's where we just like, we would all have wide open heart chakras and we're feeling each other on a heart level, which isn't necessarily emotional per se. It's more like truth. Like there is no dishonesty
Okay.
through heart telepathy. You just feel in somebody and they feel you through your heart. And it's like that's how you access their Akashic records.
Oh wow.
Um, and then the mental telepathy is the one we're more familiar with and the one that we kind of feel like is super cool. And it is very cool, but it's sort of like, you know, it's so much more efficient than I'm having to try to explain all this in words, and I'm doing a terrible job compared to the understanding that I have. And I would much rather just take this and put it right in your third eyes
Yeah. Yeah.
because
Yeah.
then you
Yeah. Yeah.
would
Yeah. Yeah.
get exactly what I'm getting and
Yeah.
we'd be like, oh yeah, cool.
It's like when
Yeah.
I text Todd
So
at 1:57 today, and I text him and I was like, "Yo, you gonna be at my house at 2:30?" And as soon as he sent the text back, he was like, "Yeah, I just woke up." I was like, "He's gonna be mad because his alarm was at 2." And then sure enough, he came to the studio and he was like, I could have got 3 more minutes of sleep, motherfucker. And I was like, I just wanted, I'm telling him now, but I was like, damn, I just wanted to tell him, like, okay, yeah, I kind of felt that when I text you. My bad, bro.
It's like, I know where I gotta be. I'll be here.
Yeah. Wow,
That's so funny. But you know what? I bet even if you hadn't texted him, you still would have woken him up with that thought at
Oh, yeah, for
yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
And like,
And he would have been like, why am I awake? I
yeah.
still have 3 minutes left.
Yep.
Yeah. Wow. So yeah, that's super interesting. So would you say like all the monoliths and all like the pyramids and all that kind of stuff that we have no explanation for, that have like kind of like these perfect cuts in them and stuff, is the work of manifestation on a higher dimension?
Yeah. Yeah. Or it's a manifestation on this dimension, but it's like we're just living in a time where we've been completely fooled into not being able to remember that we're the ones manifesting it. And like,
Wow.
we're just walking around clueless to the fact that we're doing this all day, every day. And we think it's just woo woo, new age nonsense, but we're actually doing it. So it was created by human beings who have the full mastery over how we create. It's like their chakras are all cleared out, all fully activated. They're like completely aware of basically, like, I mean, we are organic technology. Like, we are quantum computers.
Right.
So
We're the original AI.
Yeah.
Yeah, literally, except we're not artificial, but totally, like 100%. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
100%.
Absolutely. So the way I understand it is the way we get stuck on this dimension, this frequency, this awareness, this 3D realm, where we have to go through this observation of time that's linear, as opposed to time being, circular or what have you on the higher dimensions. I feel like as far as I've read into like all like the esoteric traditions and like Hinduism and stuff like that, they all kind of seem to say that it's our karma that keeps us here on this plane. Would you agree with that? And can you expand on that?
I agree with that. So the way it looks to me is, I think we honestly participated in the voluntary quarantining of this realm. Like, we created the quarantine because there was a dark energy that came in here and disturbed the balance that was naturally supposed to be here, and it sort of infiltrated all of us. And the only way to restore the balance is to work through it internally ourselves. And so we kind of like sealed our own world off so that it wouldn't just like spill out into, further, I guess you could say, galactic wars kind of. And so it is our karma. It's like, it is that realization that, you don't just get to fucking kill somebody and get away with it. That's not how it works.
Right.
And then even on smaller scales, like, you don't get to like screw somebody over, even if it's only for like $100 and just get away with it. It's just not how it works. Everybody is ourselves. And so at some point that's going to come back around, and it gets very, very nuanced. Because there are so many of us, and it can play out in so many different ways. And it's sort of like, I think it is just a matter of waking up and becoming lucid within the dream that then allows us, when we die, or I don't even think it requires dying, to be honest. I think that's what the whole like rapture kind of stuff is about, is the acknowledgement that people can ascend without like ascend and transcend the karmic wheel without having to die in order to do it. That you can do your work while you're alive, and you can get to a point where you've cleaned out all the distortions. You've seen through the illusions, and you are a representation of the truth that you were created at the moment that the creator created you.
Yeah. Man in God's image. Yeah, and I feel like that's the point of us being here. I almost feel like what you described is like the end goal, like when you hit the finish line in the video game, you know what I mean? To put it that way. Wow, man, you took us on a journey. I'm so proud and glad and amazed that you came on. Like I said, check out Amy Belair's episodes on Tinfoil Hat. 419 and 689. I know him because I just listened to him. But yeah, is there anything else you want to leave to the generation? Let me ask you this: how do we flip it around? I think I know the answer myself. As within, so without. We work on ourselves and we change ourselves so to change the world around us. Is there anything else you want to add to that or expand on that, or like how we can, go ahead and make sure that the light side is the more side that we're prone to leaning as opposed to the dark side?
Yeah, I feel like it's just an extension of what you said. And I feel like, there's in the book of Revelation, as well as in the general spiritual New Age world, there are prophecies of the 144,000, the chosen ones. And I think the chosen ones are actually the choosing ones, the ones who have chosen themselves to step up and choose and understand that we are the guardians of free will. In every moment, it's a mighty long sword that we have been entrusted with. And, to use it, to learn how to wield it masterfully is all that it takes. And whatever anybody else's journey is really not any of our business. We can only do it for ourselves.
Yes, absolutely. I love that. Thank you for coming on. One more question. If there's anybody a little bit younger, or not even young, but just kind of curious to kind of get into like maybe the stuff we talk about, or kind of want to tap into their intuitive abilities or their psychic abilities, learn how to read the records, what would be your first piece of advice for them?
Well, the first piece of advice I have is to start to assume that you do have psychic abilities.
Okay.
They're very subtle. You probably won't notice them or recognize them right away, and then write them all down. Every single little like coincidence, like little intuition, like just like you guys shared with the texting or whatever, or just like, or when you think of somebody and then they call you 2 minutes later, like write it all down and let the evidence start to build for you, and you'll recognize that you're a psychic the whole time. It's how we're born. That's how newborns communicate.
Yes. Awesome. Oh my God. Thank you so much. Amy Belair on Instagram, cosmic.oracle. She is an Akashic Records reader. She is a spiritual guru. Go ahead, follow her, hit her up. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Outsiders, thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of the Outside Minds podcast. I'm your host and creator, Stilo Free. This is the other host and creator,
Top 420.
and we out.
Peace.
Bye-bye.